sunlight is so very important. The more sunlight that our eyes can see, if you will, or the more light we're exposed to, the more serotonin our brains make. Now, you can, of course, overdo it because you do need good sleep, too. But to get good sleep, you need light during the day and dark at night. So, again, if you want to sleep well to avoid depression, have a dark bedroom. If you want to be fighting depression during the day, make sure that you get that bright light. And as Lynn has mentioned, it's so important for us to exercise in the bright light. A walk at noon, at lunchtime, will often do as much for depression as medication. I have a patient now I think of who for years has suffered from seasonal affective disorder. That's depression that comes on from not enough sunlight. And she has found and reported to me that if she will take a walk, a half-an-hour walk at noon every day, she has no problem with seasonal affective disorder. But if she can't fit that in, she needs to start on a medication to help combat that low serotonin level that arises from inadequate light. If you can't get out in the sunlight, inside light will help as long as it's full spectrum or you're getting some of the blue light. Turn up the lights. Yes, I'm worried about energy. We need to save it any way we can. Pull back the drapes on your house. Sit in front of a window. All of those things will help, but there's nothing like getting out in the sunshine at noon during the winter. Even if it's cold, bundle up. It will really help your serotonin level.
Interesting. Tell me what role sleep plays with this issue.
You know, they've done interesting studies on this. You can create depression just by sleep deprivation.
Oh.
Why? If our brain doesn't get adequate rest, the blood flow becomes sluggish. And without adequate rest, soon depression takes over. One of the reasons why we have so much depression is because we as a nation are getting less sleep now than ever before in our history. Whatever the cause of the depression, getting adequate rest is very important to the healing process. No matter what the cause, 8 hours is important. Now, some depression is manifested by hypersomnia, that is, sleeping all the time. In those cases, like cases with not enough sleep, the important thing is to set a regular bedtime and a regular time to get up. And those times should be about 8 hours apart. No more than 9, no less than 7. 7 to 9, ideally 8. And we should have regular times for sleep, regular times to get up. That scheduling of our sleep helps tremendously with depression.
I've read that the hours before midnight are more meaningful than the hours after. Is that true?
Yes, it is, Cheryl. It's very true. If you want good serotonin production, get your hours before midnight. If you want your hormone levels to balance out, get your sleep before midnight. Oh, I don't mean get up at midnight, but those 3-4 hours, if you can, before midnight help tremendously. It's hard for us to do that sometimes because we're so busy during the day and we bring our work home and we're stressed out and we're trying to get the kids to bed. But if we can establish that habit of when we come home, slowing down, turning down the lights, having a ritual, getting ready for bed, shedding the stress, putting things away, keeping a neat and orderly home and life, we'll find that we can sleep much, much better and we have less depression.
Well, it seems that we're spending a lot of time staying up at night, looking at the internet, reading, watching television, when in fact perhaps we should be asleep, and that would help us to prevent depression.
It's true, and I think one point to remember is that it takes probably a good half hour for the body to kind of wind down and get to sleep. So if we're going to think, well, we want to get those hours before midnight, then we need to kind of start the process of getting to bed earlier. And I think Tim made an important point about, getting the lights down and trying to stop activities that'll get you feeling all wired. Because if you're trying to do some problem solving, or you're working on something that's challenging, and your adrenaline system starts working in your body, then you're going to start getting pretty wired, and it'll be much harder for your body to go to sleep.
Speaking of being wired, what about coffee? What about caffeine?
Well, caffeine is an interesting chemical in our society. Many of us use caffeine. I try never to use it myself, but it is a universal drug that many people in America and the world use, and it does cause alertness. It will improve some test performance, but 3 cups of coffee will decrease your brain flow by up to 20%. Wow. It's amazing, and we want to improve our blood flow. Coffee does not improve sleep. Coffee does not improve depression. Unfortunately, sometimes when we're depressed, we feel fatigued. That's one of the signs of depression. Fatigue and just being worn down. We think, oh, if I could just have that cup of coffee, and so we do, and then another and another to, quote, treat our depression. But in treating our depression with stimulants, like coffee, we actually make it worse. Another one that people frequently treat their depression with is alcohol. That only makes depression worse. Another one is tobacco. I have so many patients that come in and say, I really want to quit smoking, but I'm just too stressed to quit. I understand, but stress is the reason you should quit, because nicotine makes stress worse. So many of these things that we really need to give up in order to get well, particularly if we have a genetic tendency toward them, or we have another reason why we've gotten depressed. We need to be particularly careful with these chemicals.
It seems that when I work with folks who are trying to quit smoking and they're successful until they get to a really difficult, stressful period of life, and if they're going to go back to smoking, that's at the time. And so that really resonates with what you're saying.
And I think that's something important, just to interject right there, is that I think it's important to think, well, I need something extra. As you said, some people would turn to an old habit like going back to smoking. And I think we have so many things to put into our lives that can be good and positive, and maybe a new exercise program, something you haven't tried before, taking up sea kayaking, or something that you've wanted to try, haven't had the time, but something positive and new and good can really help in choosing not to go back to an old habit.